Why should we learn programming the hard way? I want to know.
About a year ago, I received a mildly discouraging comment on one of my YouTube videos. At the time, I had been working on my indie game and game engine for about a year. I made some progress, but it wasn't totally obvious how far along I had come.
That's a really cool game. That was a really cool game right there. I love, this is a really great little, yeah, it's a slick little puzzle. No, it's not Portal, it's a puzzle solving. It looks like you can push things all the way to the edge. You can push things around, and then you are able to push stuff out. So when you hit this little laser, it redirected it right here. So you can get to right here. My guess is then you can put the cube here, and you can like step your way down and get out to here. Anyways.
So the guy writing the comment seemed justified in what he was saying, at least in some way. Here's what he said. What's wrong with just using a commercial game engine? I have a feeling you will have great-great-grandchildren before a game is ever done with this. Now, I don't mean to bag on him. I actually think he's coming from a fairly common place. Most of us aren't encouraged to take the harder path, and so it's pretty normal for many to assume something is too difficult before ever trying it. And in fact, at that time, my game really didn't look like much of anything. It was just kind of a white square sort of bouncing around.
I actually do want to talk for a quick second about what he just said there, which is, I hear this all the time, why wouldn't you just, because, we can relate this easily to something with web dev, right? Why don't you just use React plus whatever, right? Whatever the soup du jour is of all these things. Why would you ever do anything else? Why are you ruining your life by learning anything else? Just use React. It's the industry standard, right? You could say the same thing, right? Unity. Why would you use anything but Unreal or Unity? Why would you use Godot? Why would you use anything else? Why would you build your own? If you built your own, you're just wasting your life. Are you really wasting your life? I don't think you are. The reason why I say that is that what is the purpose of what you're doing? If you care about simply and only building a game to get it released on mobile, your fastest path probably is just use an effing engine, right? Don't dick around, just use an engine. But if your goal is to learn how things work, maybe using an engine isn't the best idea. Maybe it makes no sense to do that. Maybe you just simply want to learn how to render stuff and move stuff around and just learn everything from the very bippity bottom and do your own research and see how far you can get. Even if you never finish anything, that's still okay. Oh no, people just make these weird hardline stances. I think the problem is that there's a group of people that think the only good result is the completed project. Whereas I don't look at a completed project as the goal. The goal is to learn what I'm trying to learn. If I want to learn how, say, Kubernetes works, I don't need to complete some gigantic project to learn it. Maybe I just want to learn the Kubernetes part, and I make four small little, programs, and just I'm playing around with that, and it never goes anywhere. But I learned the thing. I didn't complete some gigantic project. And I think sometimes people forget those small little bits, which is set your goals before you begin and accomplish your goals. It doesn't have to mean a completed project.
If you were looking at it, you wouldn't have thought much of it.
Well, that was a cool
If
little
all
thing.
you ever did was pay attention to mainstream programming articles and top page Google results, I think you would be pushed into a similar mindset. Basically, anything that is mainstream in the programming world, you're presented.
By the way, I love. This is such a great idea for a video game that we're seeing here. This is super cool. It is a very cool game. It's like a Portal-esque type game with dangers on the other side. Very cool. I love Portal-esque type games.
With a view which highly emphasizes being convenient and using tools.
I feel like the opposite happened to me. I started with an engine to get the feel of game dev. As I started diving into more complex ideas, I started building plugins to do the things the game engine couldn't do. That has now led me down the path of building my engine. Yeah, there's no one route. That's the thing, is that I don't think there's a singular route. Like, if your only goal is to simply build a game, you can do your own engine. You can also not, right? Like, you just have to know, and you have to come in with the expectations of what is going to be the likely outcome. If you're building completely from scratch in your own things, guarantee you the likelihood of finishing goes way down. The likelihood of learning goes way up.
And not reinventing the wheel as much as you possibly could. And this is the dominant mindset. But I actually want to argue that this easy way of doing things, this always use someone else's tool mindset, is actually to your own detriment. And that doing the opposite of that is probably the best thing for your career. And I mean that not only in terms of the financial success that you will get, which you will actually get more money if you do things the hard way.
I love this advice currently. This advice is amazing, but I'm not going to lie to you. This video game looks nuts. Okay. He's literally playing 2 sets of pieces at the same time. I'm getting distracted by the puzzle. You know what I mean? It's like this game is super cool looking. Right? You got like, I mean, it's mixing like Mario Galaxy with all the different up and downs. Or was that Mario Galaxy or Mario Odyssey with the up and downs on it? All the different Mario's had a lot of them. And then also this Portal-esque type thing. There's so many cool little things. I do love this advice though. See, so this advice will waste your time. Why does it waste your time? See, this problem. I think this is that mentality that you're getting in your head, which is the only way to do something is to be able to complete and build projects like another YouTube clone using React or Vue or whatever, right? And that's the only thing you should be concerned about. I would completely argue the opposite. There is no such thing as wasted time if you make your goal on the outside. I spent 2 years building a startup that ultimately went bankrupt, and I lost all my money. 2 years spent building out PHP. This was 12, 13 years ago. 2 years spending 80 hours every single week working as hard as I could. What did I get out of that? Well, I went into every single interview and was one of the most qualified people to be in those interviews. I was able to consistently and constantly able to get into, every interview and be able to talk about things that they're like, oh, wow, you know way more than just front end. I was able to be that full stack kind of engineer because I had all this experience before full stack was even a term we used. I was a full stack person and I failed completely, but it got me all the way to Netflix. I don't know.
But you will also be able to pursue more interesting creative projects and ideas that you wouldn't otherwise be able to pursue. So in the course of this talk, I just simply want to argue what this mindset is, and I want to actually show you what you can gain by learning how to do software the hard way. After listening to this, I believe you will have a totally different outlook, and you will welcome new challenges in programming that will help you grow and advance your career. And it really doesn't matter if you're just starting out or have been in software for a long time and would consider yourself a senior engineer. I have benefited tremendously from the time I have spent in lower level programming. Not only do I view software engineering problems from a completely different perspective, my investment in acquiring these difficult to attain skills has led to me getting paid more, which has ultimately put me in a position where I can consider pursuing independent game development full-time. I'll show you how you can build your skills in this way and fully pursue whichever path in software most interests you. So, why are we...
I do like that. I like this thesis. I like this. Oh, what was the answer? Hold on. GitHubber. Because you won't get practical profit unless you actually finish that game and release it. You won't get a job as a Unity or Unreal dev with your own engine if the next guy, the next guy to you knows those engines better. Well, here's the problem with that statement, okay? I understand what you're saying. You're saying, hey, you don't get to make money unless if you finish a project. You don't get to have, you're also saying you don't get to have, that engine job unless if there's a guy better than you. Couple quick things there. I think you're completely wrong. Not just kind of wrong. I think you're objectively right if you only consider the most shallow case. And I think you're completely wrong otherwise. Let me give you a reason why. Just simple looking at it, you're absolutely right. If you don't release the game, you don't make any money. But what if the point was to learn how to make games and understand the insides? You work at a job where you're doing simple game dev stuff and you're helping people. So on the side, or you're at a company and you're like an, low level game, whatever you are. I don't know what the game industry low level term is called. Junior engineer of game building. And so you take all of your time and you learn all these fundamental concepts. What's going to happen? Well, it's very, very simple. When you talk to people at work, they're not going to look at you nearly as junior because you're going to start talking about these difficult concepts. You'll show people something you've built, and they're like, wow, you built every last part of that? How'd you solve this thing? How'd you do this? And now you can start talking about it in a really technical aspect and what's going to happen at your job. Sure, you never released a game. You made $0 on your game. You are now talking in such a way that people actually consider you an authority in this case. And guess what? Guess who's getting more money at their job? Guess who's getting more responsibility at their job? Guess who's getting more trust and seniority at their job? All because you didn't complete a game. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. And just because somebody knows game engines better than you, it's not a zero-sum game. There's not one game engineer or one game engine dev. There's thousands, tens of thousands of them, all building and doing something. So what do? You just need to become good enough. How do you become good enough? You have to keep on trying to make yourself better. Let's see, don't reinvent the wheel. But then why do I have 40,000 NPM dependencies? Oh my goodness, nice sentence, TJ. It's not my fault. But yes, I see what you're saying. Don't reinvent the wheel, but also, do you really want to use all of Node's packages just to do an HTTP request? Probably not. There's simple ways to do this. Anyways, it's just something to think about, which is the goal isn't always to complete. The goal isn't to directly make money off the thing. There are other ways that you get stuff out of something, right? It's not this idea that the result is black and white. Finish, make money. Don't finish, lose money, and it's bad. No, there's a middle ground. I lost all my money, all of it, making my startup. I got a job at Netflix out of it. Was it bad? No, right? Failure is growth in some sense. Yes. I mean, there's failure that's just failure. Realistically, there's failure that's failure. And then there's failure that's really great.
Reinvent the wheel. What's wrong with software in the way that it's currently built? This is the first objection you will hear whenever you tell someone you are writing a game engine from scratch. If you're doing any kind of generic tool, like a compiler, anything that is perceived to be a bigger, ambitious project, this is usually the first thing you will hear. Indeed, this is the...
Just don't write your compiler in JavaScript. Please, for the love of all things good and great and holy, stop writing tools in JavaScript.
Question that was asked of me. Why do this? Couldn't you save time by using an existing framework? And in many ways, it's difficult to argue with a statement like this because it's true. You will usually save time in the short term by using an existing tool or framework. That said, I think an argument like this falls flat in a few ways, and I think it's because it presupposes that you have the same goals as the person asking the question. I want to frame this question in a slightly different way. Imagine asking a professional MMA fighter a similar question. Why do this? Why do you think training to punch others with your bare hands is better than firing a rifle or having a drone carry out a strike? Why lift weights when you can use your car to haul things around town? Why ride your mountain bike when you can drive anywhere you want to go?
Hold on just 1 second. Okay, we're back again. Sorry. Small interruption. Let's go.
Cook your own meals when you can just order takeout? All of these save time and accomplish what is assumed to be the goal. And that's what I want to get at. What is this assumed goal which is buried inside of the question? I believe the question assumes your goal is to get something to market as quickly as possible, to spend the least possible amount of time making your game or product. Under certain circumstances, this goal can make a lot of sense. If you are employed by someone else and they're paying you to get something rough out on the market as soon as you possibly can, saving time is your number one priority. You really don't have much leverage or flexibility there. But people don't lift weights, go mountain biking, or train in martial arts because they're just trying to save time. People do these things because they are valuable in and of themselves, and because people enjoy pushing their own limits. People challenge themselves because they like to get smarter, faster, and stronger. If your only goal in software is to make money, I think you'll end up feeling pretty hollow after a while. You'll eventually...
I do agree with this statement. I do completely agree with this statement, is that if you only have a singular goal, it is very, like a singular goal of just making money, even though there is definitely completely reasonable goal of making money, right? But there's also if the only goal is that, it can be extremely unfulfilling. It can be extremely unfulfilling. Obviously everybody wants a good life. Everyone wants to be able to make money. But, there comes a point where making more money doesn't make as big of a difference in your life. And if your hope and your goal is like, oh, once I just get to this level, I can finally be happy. And then you get to that level and then you're like, oh, maybe it's actually this level that finally makes me happy. You're going to very soon enter into the worst place in the world, which is the cul-de-sac of stupidity, right? Like we've all been in the cul-de-sac of stupidity from time to time, right? The cul-de-sac of being, of course, where you think that the thing that's going to make you happy and you finally achieve it and you're not happy. So your thought is, well, I just simply need more of that thing and then I'll be happy. That's the cul-de-sac of stupidity, right? Once you hit there, you're like, dang it, I'm not happy. Maybe more will make it happy. You know what I mean? And it's just not. Mo money, mo problems. But, I mean, at the end of the day, there's people that aren't making any money. And making money is most certainly a good first step into just achieving some general goodness, right? Let's see, you feel nothing when you install that TV and you know it. Is it? No expectations, no disappointment. You should have some expectations in life. Come on.
Arrive at a place where you don't feel like you are challenging yourself properly. Like there's no forward momentum in your life, even though you're making gobs of money. Challenge makes life interesting and worthwhile. We thrive when we go past our limits and learn new things. Doing things the hard way makes you realize what's possible for you. It opens up new horizons. After challenging myself with the prospect of building a game engine, I'm surprisingly not against using libraries or third-party code. The only thing that has changed is the way I view using those libraries. I have a better idea of what I am looking for in a library, and I know which sorts of libraries will make me less productive. It's valuable to program the hard way because it's the only way you can truly learn and grow. It's supposed to take lots of time because that's how learning feels. You aren't doing it for a quick win in the present. You're doing it to become a more skillful person for the long run of your entire career.
I feel like that's that's the similar piece of advice that I give when it comes to if you want to be in a different position than you are in now, you train for the position where you want to be in. You don't train for the position that you're currently in. So if you are a React engineer, as some people call themselves, they say the stupidest phrase in the universe, I learned React before I learned JavaScript. If you're that person now and you want to be somewhere else, train for that position somewhere else. Do your day job in whatever you do your day job in and train for where you want to be, not where you're at.
How many times have you felt totally stuck in some programming problem you're trying to solve? Oftentimes, the character of building an app or a game is such that you go through one big obstacle after another. When you're stuck in the thick of solving a difficult programming problem, it can oftentimes feel like everything hinges on your ability to get past it. Indeed, this has happened throughout the development of my own game. I got stuck figuring out how to use the GPU to draw colored squares onto the screen. This week, I got stuck working on an audio mixer based on a 2-second circular audio buffer on the Mac platform. When you're stuck, it seems like everything is going to take so much more time than it really does. But once you're past the obstacle, it's surprising how quickly the various remaining pieces snap together. This certainly happened to me recently. I hired an artist to do an aesthetic overhaul of my game's world, and boy oh boy did he deliver. He gave me this huge 200-tile sprite sheet, and I had to somehow incorporate all of this new art into my game. Interestingly, the hardest part of all of it was writing an algorithm to load the PNG file and to sample into the various tile and player character textures. Once I wrote that code, the rest was smooth sailing, and I had new graphics in the game after about 2 weeks of work. The hard way is only hard at the very outset. Once you get past those initial obstacles, you will be surprised with how productive you can become. Because I know my game engine inside and out, it was very easy to integrate the new graphics into it once I had them loaded into memory. I didn't have to fight with...
That is fair. That is fair. Even if what you build is less complete than anything else, the full knowledge of its insides and outsides does give you some sort of competitive advantage that is different than simply just having some understanding of just like little bits of the outside. I'm not saying it's always better. I'm not saying it's the way to go. I'm not saying that it scales, right? It certainly does not scale because then when you hire somebody, they have to learn your version of the thing, right? And so it's not always the best way to go, but there is definitely something to that that is very true. Luckily, the game, by the way, in the background keeps repeating itself, so I no longer feel I can now listen to him much better. I can't wait for the Primegen to write about 25% of the game engine on stream. Oh, dude, it's gonna be the best 25% you've ever seen.
With any third-party libraries with closed source code I can't read. Oftentimes in life, you will struggle early on in order to reap rewards later. That is the philosophy of programming the hard way. Struggle now so you can build the skills necessary to do great work and become even more productive later on. So at this point, you're probably following along and thinking, okay, Ted, that's great and all, but I don't ever get any time to do any of this sort of stuff in my job. Why would this be valuable to me in a career where we never touch any of this lower level stuff?
Yes.
And I have one word for you,
Please.
and that word is confidence. An uncanny thing happens when you come back for air after tangling with a sea monster or any difficult problem. You become more confident in your own abilities. Things which used to seem scary to you no longer do, and this is reflected in so many aspects of the way you carry yourself in the world. I'll draw an analogy from snowboarding, one of my favorite pursuits. Before I got into snowboarding, I didn't quite carry myself with the same degree of confidence. It's kind of difficult to describe, but it's like I was less physical in some way. I wouldn't have been willing to engage in a fight or even know what to do if I got into a situation like that. Now, I'm not saying I want to get into a fight or in any way interested in that, but before snowboarding, I didn't have a way to understand how I might interact in a seriously dangerous situation. And then, for several years, I did nothing but snowboarding, and I intentionally put myself into some pretty hairy situations. I've crashed on all parts of my body, sustained some minor concussions, witnessed my blood filling with adrenaline and my heart racing. I faced my fears and walked away from it. I've done a few noteworthy things, but mostly had a good time and made some lifelong friends. I can say, without hesitation, that snowboarding has made me a more confident person. It changed me in a deep and irreversible way. Because of snowboarding, I'm more situationally aware. I have a sharper sense of how things work physically. I carry myself differently. I have experienced a similar thing with lower-level programming. After wrestling with writing a custom audio mixer, I can more confidently speak about audio in apps and games. This confidence immediately comes across when I'm talking to other people.
Pre-watched. Clearly pre-watched. That's what I'm talking about. Right? Like, it's literally what I'm talking about. Is by doing your own thing, when you talk to other people, it makes an incredible difference. Right? Because you're just able to talk about things that only people who have done it, there's like this special ring that you gotta get a step into. And you'll notice that when you do this, is that as you do these things on your own, and you're talking to somebody else who's also done it, you get the inner circle effect. You're like, oh, you're a part of the inner circle. Come on in. Let's talk about this thing we're doing, right? And all of a sudden, people are bouncing ideas off of you. You want to guess who's getting that next position when it opens up on the team? The person that they talk to with problems and all that, or some new person off the street? Guarantee it won't be you if they never talk to you. Guarantee it will be you if you're always talking to them, if you're always able to be a part of stuff. It's like so simple to do. How do you think I'm on the team I'm on? Pre-watched.
Oftentimes it's like I'm having a totally different conversation about the topic, because I now view it from a deeper level. You can't fake confidence like this. The only way to get it is to wrestle some sea monsters. And there's another wonderful thing about confidence.
I love being a sea man, doing some sea monster wrestling.
It is a predictor of long-term financial success. If you are confident in the way you speak about your domain of expertise, people will want to hire you. Mm-hmm. They will pay you more because they know you've got a greater chance of getting them to where they want to go. I have no doubt that my experience in lower-level game engine programming is a reason I was able to keep one of my more lucrative software contracting gigs longer than many of the other people on that team. Even though it didn't seem like it at the time, wrestling that beast has made me more wealthy by making me more confident in my abilities. Confident people make more money. Tackling hard problems makes you more confident. Therefore, programming the hard way makes you rich, even if it doesn't seem like it at first. So,
okay, I can't make that last guarantee. Like, I get where he's going with that situation, but I cannot make that last statement 100% true. But hey, TJ, you started out in college contributing to NeoVim, not knowing what to do. You didn't even know how Git works, and you started to go there and you started to do that. Now you work at SourceGraph, where you work on language stuff, right? Like, this is a direct application of exactly that, which is that you figured out doing something for free and really not necessarily worth it, you know, in the current sense. It opened up and made it so that you were able to do that. 100%, I think my journey with NeoVim stuff has allowed me to make 2 to 4 times as much money as I would have been otherwise. It's real talk, right? This is great. It's great advice.
You've convinced me. Where do I start? How can I do what you do?
Oh, I love this question.
I would advise you to pick anything you don't understand deeply enough and dive deeper into it. Maybe you've been making iPhone apps for quite some time, and you've been relying on frameworks like UIKit or AV Foundation. Maybe you made a game with
React
SpriteKit
Native.
but want to dive deeper and understand how SpriteKit does its rendering using Metal. Take anything you've worked on before and try to do something similar, but without using a library or using libraries very sparsely. Let's take my game engine as an example. Earlier on, I tried to make games with Apple's SpriteKit. I found it fairly frustrating due to the lack of control you have, and I wanted to make something better. That's how I got introduced to Handmade Hero, a YouTube video series where Casey Muratori
Love Casey.
tackles the ambitious project of building a game and game engine from scratch. Casey taught me the basics of lower-level game engine design, and I eventually learned how Metal works. I now have a game which uses Metal as its renderer on the Mac platform, and a game engine which could be the foundation of something like SpriteKit if I ever wanted to make something like that. I took on a fairly ambitious project, but you could start with some smaller goals if you wanted to. Here's an easy one. If you have been using a client app for Git source control, try learning how to use Git from the command line. It's a small thing you can do that will give you deeper knowledge of how Git source control works, and learning it will make you way more confident when dealing with source control problems on your own team. As a result, you will be the go-to gal or guy who can wrestle with complicated and hairy source control problems when the need arises, and your value will almost certainly be known. When it comes time for the person who controls the...
Very simple, very good advice. All this is really good. You know, I typically never give more advice than build what you want to build. I'm always kind of worried about giving like specific situational stuff. But for me, it always comes down to the thing, which is you got to find that intersection between what you're interested in and what you don't have knowledge in. So it's not just about building a past project, but redoing it in some way so where you use less libraries. But it's about making sure that you also have that position that you're excited about, because you need to get far enough to gain that knowledge. And sometimes that does look like finishing a project.
purse strings to decide who to keep, who to promote, and who to cut, you won't be among those who get cut. You will be among those who get promoted because you can solve problems in ways others simply can't. You don't really know what muscles you can build until you try.
It is making me want to build games. Every single time I see games, I want to build games. And it is a certain problem because I know I will never finish it.
Try to build them. As it turns out, the guy who wrote that YouTube comment was wrong. I have a game that isn't too far from being shippable, and I don't yet have great-grandchildren. I'm very much alive and still quite young. Better yet, I now have an improved skill set I can use to tackle even more ambitious projects. I have my own game engine and code I can repurpose for the next thing. Muscles get weak if you don't use them, and it's the same thing with programming skills. Doing things the hard way gets your mind into shape, and it prepares you to do rewarding and challenging deep work. You don't do it because it pays in the short term. You do it because it has long-lasting benefits. Try programming the hard way. Just a small amount of time invested could make you more confident in your abilities. Confidence makes you more employable, which increases your pay. I can say with zero hesitation that the time I have invested has been worthwhile, and it is responsible for taking me as far as I have gotten in my career. I wish you all the best with your struggles and sea monster slaying. If you have a story to share about overcoming obstacles in programming, just leave it below. I'd love to read about it.
I do like that the next video suggested is why you shouldn't make a game engine. We just got done listening to this whole time about why you should. Next video, why you shouldn't. Why you should not do this at all. Dude, first off, thumbs up. Great video. Theodore Bendixson. That Ben Dixon's so good. You got the subscribe. Appreciate that. Very awesome. That was a great video. And I just wish more people were willing to do that. I think one thing that ends up happening a lot, especially in our, maybe you Zoomers have this problem the worst, which is learned helplessness. There's like this feeling like you can't do it, or you're unable to do it, or only smart people do this, or some series of excuses that exist where you are the center of your universe and you only focus on yourself, and yourself isn't able to do it, and only, and so it's like, don't have learned helplessness, right? Fight it. You are much, much more likely and more capable than you probably realize. Most people are. Now, there are some people that maybe aren't capable, but you're probably not one of them. Statistically speaking, if you know how to program, you're probably not that person. You probably are a person that is capable in doing it. So give it a shot, right? Give it a shot at least once. Unlearn helplessness. Yeah. Are you talking about imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is a part of this all. I'm low-key an idiot. If you know how to program, you're not an idiot. Honestly, It just like, I mean, I know you're joking, or you're self-deprecating. You're just not, you know? The name is I want to make a game engine. Oh my goodness, I want to so bad.